Hello, everybody. 1 second while I pop this up. Give another 3 seconds for people to keep filing in. All right. Happy day 3, everybody. Mike Cubberly here again, head of community here at Rev Genius, also founder of Bottle Rocket Growth. Welcome to the GTM floor, Building the OS Beneath GTM, a session focused on infrastructure and systems that keep go-to-market teams aligned, efficient, and scalable. Joining us today, Shaynara O'Brien, who's led go-to-market enablement and strategy efforts that help organizations connect the dots between sales, marketing, and operations. Check the messages below. I'll be dropping her LinkedIn along with mine. Let's get everybody connected. Thanks and enjoy the session. Shaynara?
Hi. Thank you, Mike, for that wonderful intro. I am stoked to be here today. I'd love this to be a very collaborative conversation. I am not an experienced Goldcast user, so I'm giving everybody that heads up. Hopefully, there's not a lot of glitching, and Mike will save me if I run into trouble. So let's dive right in. Like I said, let's make it collaborative. So if you have questions, just drop them in, and the team will flag for us to answer right then and there. Okay, so in this wonderful world now that where generative AI is kind of owning every narrative that we're interacting with, every brand that we're interacting with, we're hearing a lot about intelligence layers, right? We need to use generative AI to really embed intelligence in the way we go to market. But the main challenge with that is essentially what we talk about and what we do tends to have a massive disconnect. So if we think about what Americans really die from, I'm sure you think a myriad of things. But why I love this particular research hub, their profile on Instagram is called Our World in Data. It's also a really great website. Is they do awesome infographics on just kind of telling stories through strong visual telling about what we're hearing and what's actually the truth. So we see that, media coverage will lean into things like homicide or terrorism or drug overdoses. I'm sorry, this is seeming political. It's not meant to be. But the actual main cause of death in the US tends to be health related, heart disease being one of them, the cancer secondary to that. So what tends to happen, especially in media cycles, is that where is the hype? Right? The hype tends to have that wonderful gravity to it. And when it comes to GTM in 2025, and as we look to 2026, we see a lot of hype around what it means, right? So we have a lot of conversations about upgrading our stack or funnel metrics or really accelerating launch velocity or sales velocity, marketing and sales alignment. But those are very broad pillars. And at the end of the day, we can kind of talk about that hours, days, weeks on at end. But what we really need to get into is that modern day GTM requires us to rethink how we've been doing things for the past decade and relearn how we're going to do them for the decade ahead, right? The obvious things that we've been talking about most of the time tends not to be the root cause of what's really obstructing transformative growth. There's growth and there's transformative growth. Progressive growth is when we're bobbing along, we're hitting our MQL targets. If you use MQLs as a metric, or you're building pipeline and you're seeing those upticks that you had planned on, transformative growth is really foundational to how we really build products, right? And we see that changing right now. So this is just a kind of really broad view of what's happening in the tech ecosystem. We see the research labs having a massive place in just the types of technologies we're using, whether you're a Claude user, a GPT user, a Gemini user. We're seeing the hyperscalers like AWS and Microsoft, Copilot, if you've ever used it, it's really awesome. AWS has Bedrock. now Bedrock Core. And then we've got this whole new group of companies that are really allowing marketers like ourselves to build software, to build applications, to build landing pages. At Thought Bakery, we've kind of named this segment as problem-based software delivery apps. And the enterprise platform layer is also changing. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you were either, are you Pardot? Are you HubSpot? Are you Eloqua or Marketo or whatever it is? And now, we have champions like ServiceNow who are enabling us to really create agentic systems and make our data more dynamic. So the way technology is changing at the foundational level, the way products are being built, the way they're being shipped, our ability to literally move shipping times from weeks and months to days. Sometimes within a day, companies are shipping multiple product updates. As marketers, our go-to-market agility has to be massively accelerated, right? And that really tends to make us feel overwhelmed. And in VC world, we kind of see this narrative coming out that is less about building on top of, and it is more recognizing that this is not one of those moments where we can kind of put a patch on things or we can learn a new process. Things sort of have to be rebuilt. And whilst that can seem overwhelming and a bit, anxiety riddling when we really grapple with what that means, it's actually a good thing, because what we can do is start with the data sources and the foundational concept of what I call the GTM floor of what really matters to our brands. And that comes down to basically three things, right? For us at Thought Bakery, we really lean into a lot of some of the voices behind building massive companies that are doing well. So Sarah Go, she's the founder of Conviction VC. That's a VC behind companies like Figma. And she identifies taste as, the relentless, almost painful ability to know what should exist, what shouldn't, and where quality matters. It's the difference between shipping a product and shipping a point of view. In go-to-market, taste needs to be inherent to everything that we do, from the narratives that we developed to the way we distribute the content, the way, if you're running a founder-led sales motion, the way the founder's perspectives translates into derivative content. And it's really the company's identity in motion across the product and customer experience. It is inherent to the way it is inherent to the way the brand communicates with the market and the perspective that is developed by the market about the brand. Tooling, sorry, the slide is a little bit messy, but going back to that comparison of like a decade ago to now, like we were very, very excited about marketing automation. It was more focused on email and having a streamlined way to communicate with B2B audiences. Even when we were doing things like a product launch, right? That campaign sometimes would be in the works 1, 2, sometimes 3 quarters before launch. And now when we look at what tooling means in modern day GTM, we've got B2B buyers interacting with at least 10 different environments, whether it is their Slack groups or LinkedIn, or their other, some folks are on Discord. I'm on subreddits a lot. Like there are so many points of contact that our buyers are autonomously engaging with. On the tooling side, we're trying to reach them everywhere in the most personalized way. And with that, combined with the wonderful opportunities brought by generative AI, we've got an influx of tools that are super useful, super helpful. But at the end of the day, if we cannot look at how these tools are really augmenting the value that's resident in our customer data, the reasons why our customers love us, the reasons why we've established a strong product market fit, the reasons why this tool is helpful for certain domains, roles, personas across different market sizes. These tools are really just a patch. And I think many times we can get hung up on talking about them in an abstract way versus actually looking at the first party data that is in our system and recognizing, one, do we even have the scale to onboard some of these tools? Do we need to make that data more healthy? And do we need to improve how the signals that we're collecting? Because useful data needs to translate to helpful signals that influence strong go to market motions. And the third T is really transmission, which is just another word for distribution. I have wrangled so many I want to say it this way. Most of the time in the discovery phase, we usually work with startups that are, they can be in stealth or up to Series A. And many times it's like, we want to be, okay, we know our people are on LinkedIn, we want to be on YouTube, we want to be here, we want to be there. And it's like, where do your audiences trust information about your market segment? So I'll give you an example. Would you go on Tinder to find an accountant? I mean, you probably could, but it's probably not the best place to find and hire an accountant. It's the same thing with B2B buying. With 80% of the journey, we've seen it from Sixth Sense, McKinsey, all of these reputable sources showing you 75-80% of the journey being autonomous, especially at top of the funnel. Distribution has to be not so distilled where people are getting fragments of your brand. You want your brand to be present in places where your target audiences trust information about your competitive set or about what you're offering. Yes, I love that example too, Jay. So this graphic is a little bit old. We had done it last year. There's a ton of data points to add to that. But when we look at how people are learning, one of our core ICPs, or I guess the ICP of our clients is our software leaders, right? So CTOs, CISOs. These, like most people don't realize, developer audiences, 85% of them have ad blockers on. So when we're working with these brands, paid campaigns are not a huge part of our first set of work, right? Maybe after 6 months, 9 months, sure, we start to see what's working, what we have momentum around. But when we talk about how these audiences trust information, like YouTube is a massive lever, because there I don't have to show up the same way I show up on LinkedIn. Nobody knows me. I go, I learn, I look at what I want in the way I want, especially if you're creating derivative content off of those longer form videos. So transmission is really, really critical through the lens of, you need to let me put it this way. Transmission is critical when it comes to talking about where your audiences trust information about you. And what people tend to miss is that when we talk about taste, tooling, and transmission, we think, okay, I want, we have a quota, we have a mandate to 3x our quota within the next 12 months. We have X amount of accounts in our CRM, and it's a scaled personalization play, but we're not actually dialing to a repeatable framework for GTM that's going to bring us success. And what I loved about Clay just a week ago is they posted this carousel, and it says start small, right? By training individuals on role-specific AI use cases, document wins, and scale proven workflows. Modern day GTM is evolving faster. Like, I don't know if you feel the same way. I really cannot keep up. Right? I work with a specific client in the management consultancy industry, and my job is really just to distill market news of the future of enterprise AI. And sometimes I'm like, I am getting a brain freeze. Like, it's moving so fast. So when we talk about creating modern GTM plays, we have to really spend a lot of time with our own data, auditing it, understanding what signals are we missing, what signals are reliable, what signals are actually influencing sales and marketing motions. And within the organization, building data automations where we're getting intelligence from the product team from usage data. That data is being translated into sales specific narratives. Then it's being translated into marketing specific narratives. And then within the marketing function, we have growth demand initiatives. Then we have brand initiatives. When we think about the agility that's required to ship all of that with especially AI native companies shipping now sometimes daily or weekly. If you follow the Cursor account, you'll see there's a new video at least every 3 to 4 days. Like it can get to the point where we're wondering, is it a tooling issue? Is it that we're just not fast enough? But it really comes down to the foundational health of how you are collecting those first party signals, and whether or not you're taking those first party signals and translating them into your campaign initiatives or even into your internal communications. Many times we sit with teams and they're like, yes, we have a mandate to use more AI. And I'm like, well, let's look at your CRM. One client was like, we're not sure we can give you access to that. And I was like, well, I don't think this is a good fit, because if we can't even look at the data in terms of how it's really fueling your audience connections, how it's really influencing different parts of the funnel, then having a conversation about AI is almost moot. Then sometimes when we get into an audit, we'll find that marketing is really good at leveraging some of the capabilities of their CRM, especially with newer CRMs like Clarity or @IO, where the signaling is almost pre-baked for you. But then the sales team, they're not using it. So they're only putting in, signaling maybe when the deal is midway or when it's closed. So we're not getting that 360 view that's really going to allow us to run faster with generative AI. Generative AI augments. So if you got poop in, you're going to get poop out, right? You've got awesome stuff in, you're going to have unicorns at the other end. So I don't know, Mike, you can help me out with this. I wrote about this. I have a Substack specifically on the GTM floor, but we kind of came up with these 5 questions that if you can answer these positively, you're in a great place. You probably have a strong go-to-market floor where your data is healthy, you have intelligence that is really symbiotic between teams, and you are really customer focused, even if you're running a PLG motion. But if you are still struggling to figure out what's the recipe that's been working, and you're not really having a repeatable workflow for understanding, where certain segments win with with the USPs you go to market, and where we're still struggling to figure out why they're not converting, that is an opportunity to increase the strength of signaling and to really get more healthy data into the organization. I'm not going to go through this, but I wanted to put this slide here, is that when we talk about modern day GTM and creating an intelligence layer, your intelligence is only as good as your ability to really get cross-team stakeholders to buy in to modern day GTM. So many times we talk about, okay, the head of marketing has to champion the use of AI. The head of marketing has to get us to ship more, to go to market faster, to be more nimble within our competitive set. To do those things, we need internal stakeholder alignment. For instance, if we have a leadership team that still needs to give feedback on how we're positioned, whether it's on a web page or it's on a new ad campaign, many times we look at modern day GTM and we want to point to one individual person or function. But agility is something that is inherent to how the entire org works. And this slide, I've used it many times and the feedback has been positive, because many times I'll get nodding heads that say, yeah, we've tried to do a hackathon, or we've tried to build out campaigns that were really, really launch employee generated content programs, or to even try a bit of a UGC campaign in B2B, but it was shut down. And it makes it seem like the team is not trying to be more nimble or more modern, but sometimes the learning within the organization of how these newer strategies, these newer formats, these newer distribution channels work, it creates doubt and it slows down that decision making that is necessary for us to move towards modern day GTM. So how does this work in the wild? Dear God, I hope I don't mess this up. Okay. So I'll be sharing this with anyone who wants it. But basically, we did this infographic that kind of walks through an example of each of the three things I spoke about, right? So what does taste look like, right? What is the purpose of it? And what is the editorial nuance of it? So sales, they need to be able to create things on the fly. Sales should not be waiting on marketing to ship anything. Honestly, in the age of AI, we can create marquee messaging, especially marquee product messaging that sits within a GPT project. Yes, a GPT project or within a Google Notebook or so many other or a Claude artifact. There's so many options. Product needs to be able to ship messaging to support some of that. Brand needs to be able to ship thought leadership. Growth needs to be able to ship education across different levels in the funnel. And at the end of the day, we can't have this kind of bogged down approach to having people constantly sort of micromanage each other so that they can really focus on if we're micromanaging each other, we're spending more time doing that, and our shipping speed gets slowed down to the point where morale starts to get affected. The other thing is that, so this gives you a bit of an example of some of the tools that people are already using. I believe Anise spoke yesterday or day before. A lot of folks are using Granola. Some clients they just have their Zoom call data. Like something as simple as just taking your call data and creating a buyer FAQ and glossary out of it, and then using that to create your customer facing content is one of the best things for creating a strong GTM floor. Why? Because over time, that is getting updated with more call data, which means your use case language is getting updated. The way they're verbalizing pain points is getting updated. What you can do now with integrations between, let's say, Claude and Figma, you can then take that glossary and create 200 ad creatives and optimize them based on the strongest keywords from that marquee glossary you would have created. So the idea is that when we have strong first party signaling and we have converted that first party signaling into very, very influential insights using some of these tools, then our signal scoring becomes more reliable. Then our data enrichment really points us to people and accounts that we need to connect with. And then we start moving towards actual workflow intelligence. Information, knowledge. So it goes like this, right? You can have a lot of information. It doesn't mean we have a lot of knowledge. And we can have a lot of knowledge. It doesn't mean it translates to intelligence. But to get to the point of intelligence, we know what are the building blocks. Because if you've been in B2B for the past decade, you know one of the things that matters the most to people is relevance and nuance. People like to receive information in the context of their role, their industry, and their specific pain points as it relates to the type of market they're in, not just their industry, but like the size of their org. And then this one is a bit intensive. We've kind of gone into the different types of transmission. So you have own channels, social media, real life events, digital out of home. I really think that's making a great, wonderful comeback. And that creates a cross-channel intelligence layer to really figure out, that if you're leveraging some or all of these, you now have a toolkit that is AI powered to really understand which of these distro channels are working for us, which of these have the highest trust signaling with our ICP, and then inform now future campaigns where you might be marketing to less people, but you have more qualified calls in pipeline, opportunities in pipeline. And pipeline doesn't always have to be customers. Sometimes your audience includes, investors you want to get in front of, channel partners you want to collaborate with, employees that you want to hire. So at the end of the day, I think I have to switch back now. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's really, I feel like I'm aging out with all of this tech. Forgive me. Okay, we're back on. So at the end of the day, if you're a Disney fan, this will resonate with you. Meet the Robinsons. This is where it's from. It's one of my favorite films. With my kids, but also all time. Right now, go to market can feel sometimes like, we're getting a lot of tools thrown at us. We're getting less headcount, budgets cut. We're seeing layoffs sometimes weekly, monthly, and we're worrying if as individuals we can really keep up with the velocity that is being expected of us. But if we look at how generative AI is meant to really augment the performance of your GTM strategy, you will see that it can allow us to cross collaborate a lot more coherently. We can spend a lot more of our time less trying to figure out siloed data and what it means and what the customer may want to hear and actually what they want to hear because it's what they've been saying. And it really allows us to connect to them in a meaningful way, right? When we talk about personalization, we're no longer where it's first name and last name. It's no longer like, hey, I saw you went to high school here and I also live there. Like, it's really about what makes this person tick. A question I tend to ask our POCs is can you give me a sample calendar of your ICP's day to day? And if you cannot do that, you do not know them well enough, right? Because if you're selling a tool, that is a 10-minute slot in their day. That is a LinkedIn post in their day. Their entire day is filled with things that are focused on maintaining their job security and the security and health of their team, the performance of their team, the changes that's happening within their market set. Like you're just like a line item if you get the call. So understanding your day to day is really resident in the first party signaling that you're collecting. And when that is strong, sky is really the sky is really the limit, because taste defines who you are. With every UX interaction, with every ad campaign, with every website banner, with every generative query, it's going to be, people are going to, when they see it, they're going to know that's you. Tooling is going to help you accelerate over time, regardless of how the market is changing. And then getting really, really clear on where your distro needs to be focused, that is going to tell you how far you can really push different types of education through the funnel with your segments. And I think that's it. So, yep, I'll share the infographic. I do have to, the team was working on it last night, so I just want to gloss over it one more time and then I'll share it with everyone. But yes, Mike, this is where you come in. I don't know if we have any questions or anything like that.
Amazing. It is my time. Crew, what do we have? What do we have for Shinara? While we wait on that, I had one. So as you touched on, so many folks in go-to-market right now, we're all inundated with tools and agents and workflows and processes. We're being told we need to do this, but we need to do 16,000 other things to get to that point. If myself included, if we're all inundated, yet we're in charge of modernizing stacks or processes and whatever for our teams, what's the first thing that you would look at, the first thing that you would do if you're maybe not inundated with great resources right now or a great team to go out and do those 25,000 things? What's the first thing that you would do?
So traditionally, as for B2B marketing, we're big on planning, right? Like I get such a jazz from those long Google documents, and we have Q1 or H1, we're doing this, and H2, we're doing that, and we have to hit this MR. All of that's bullshit. In the age of generative AI, we are literally prototyping a landing page with Lovable this morning, and we are shipping it by 5 p.m. And then overnight, we'll kind of figure out the bugs if we have to. And then in the morning, we push a new campaign. We need to get very clear on what leadership expects from us in a page or less. Then we reverse engineer from that. So if leadership is telling you, hey, we are at 50 ARR, right? 50 mil ARR now. We need that to go to 75 to 85 next year. Cool. That's a nice target. Okay. What powers that target? You get a budget. Okay, cool. Then you do the math of that budget. Because the thing is, we're coming off the age of growth at all costs, and we're entering the age of growth for profitability. So if you're going to give me a budget and expect me to hack it, but I cannot do it at all costs, like I can't, the sky is not really the limit here, right? There's very strong limitations to what I can do. We need to get very clear on inputs and outputs. That's where we start. Then when we have that alignment between marketing leadership and the org leadership, then we reverse engineer and say, okay, cool. This is a target we will set, and we always make it a little bit higher so we can push ourselves, right? We have to build muscle with a lot of these new tools. Sometimes, I always tell people just bump it up 10% internally so that the team, it's almost like they have a secret. It's like, we know we want to exceed this goal, right? We're not going to tell everybody else that we want to, but we're going to try and do it. And then we figure out what resources are we going to employ in terms of people, and what resources are we going to push to AI. I think if we started looking at AI as almost like a tooling, an assistant that really tends to help us take all of the distractions. So like the highly administrative things that we'd have to do, for instance, like creating ebooks now. When you run a deep research report, I don't know how many people have tried Atlas coming out of OpenAI this week. Like the fact that we can really pick the sources that we want knowledge to come from, and we can have a really meaty resource, and we can push that into our CRM to, let's say, all of the clients. Let's say you're a B2B marketing technology company and you want to push specifically to your cybersecurity segment, right? And we saw what happened with AWS earlier this week, and you really wanted to dial into that. We no longer have to spend more than 24 hours to run that campaign and then create derivative content every week. However, if we're not clear on what resources we have to employ, and we're not clear if what we're doing is going to serve the expectations of the leadership team, because that might not be a high priority segment for them, that is literally a bunch of wasted work that we might have gotten excited about that now falls flat. And the thing is with morale, it's like if you tell toddlers they're going to a candy store. I have 3, so it's 5, 3, and 2. And you tell them you're going to a candy store and you take them to a library. Both are wonderful places. Their reaction when they go to the library, trust me, the recovery there is terrible. So when you get people's morale up and they dive in, so they're using AI tools, they're researching this, they're finding new segments, they're digging into clay and and it's like, yeah, we have these leads in pipeline, but they don't match our ICP, or we don't really think that that's really the segment we want to dial into. How do you think the team feels? And how do we get them to go do all those things again with the same enthusiasm? So I know that was a bit of a ramble, but I always start with, what is that one pager that tells us what is expected of us for the next 2 quarters? Like that is like, if you could get them to sign on the dotted line, that's the expectation. Great. Awesome. Let's look at inputs. How can we use what we have to fuel that? And then it's very methodical in what we do. And then everybody knows where we're going and what we're meant to hit. And the hope is that when we hit it or exceed it, leadership recognizes that we are accelerating velocity and we get more resources to expand the scale of that impact.
Wow. Well said. I mean, not at all not at all just a bunch of drivel. That was incredibly knowledgeable. And someone said, she's a whiz. Absolutely. This is a very impressive conversation, that one-way conversation, but hopefully everyone's taking a lot out of this. I know they are, because I've got a lot of questions. We still have about 11 minutes here, give or take. So let's maybe look at some of the fresh ones here. Connor says, love the thoughts on creating information store of calls with sales and most resonant posts. Where's the best place to store these things for a whole company? For workflows, are you vectorizing this or simply storing in a Claude working doc?
This is about call data, right?
Seems to be.
Yes. So it would be in your CRM of choice. So for instance, HubSpot, Salesforce, it allows us to log our calls. You have integrations with Zoom or Avoma or any kind of recording. Granola is becoming a favorite. But honestly, it can literally be as simple as taking your calls wherever, like let's say you're in Zoom and they're stored in a documents folder, is that taking the transcripts of the calls and just adding it to a custom GPT or to an artifact. And then weekly running the same prompt and exercise. Tell me in the customer's voice only, or tell me with direct excerpts from the transcript how personas are verbalizing A or B or C. Right? The thing is, these types of exercises pre-AI would take us ages, and we would spend all the time we have to figure that out. Now we can skip to the part where we get together in a huddle and say, hey folks, I took the last 5 close one calls and here's what I'm seeing, right? How do we spin this up into a new piece of content to support this segment? Right? Or we see this account really showing high signaling on this set of keywords, like for folks that are still using like 6sense, they have these type of insights. But with the first party data we're getting from like call data, we can now create a marriage between both at the contact level, because we can say, okay, I don't know, let's say FedEx is an account we're seeing having high intent, and we know the roles and persona within FedEx we want to talk to, and we know the keywords that on the account level we're seeing is surging. Then we go into our call data for a target persona. Hopefully we have close one data or just general customer data that aligns with that segment, and we pull some of that language out. And then we speak to FedEx in the context that resonates with how they view certain USPs or how they view their problems, right? I think what tends to get missed is that we try to overcomplicate it. So you can also create a workflow with N8N where you automate, when your calls come in, have it routed to Notion, and then have that connect to Slack to give you just a distilled summary of what were the top keywords in the conversation. Or one that I like to recommend is building a workflow for your closed won opportunities and looking at the language that changes over time. So,
Nice.
because if we look at how Cursor has experienced phenomenal growth, Cursor started off, just so everyone knows, it's a million devs, right? Uses Cursor. They're going head to head with GitHub. And they started off with a PLG motion. Developers found it so useful where they were just like going to their companies and saying, I want to use this in my job. I don't just want to use this on my private projects. And they brought in great talent from like Knowingly to really create that trust with the enterprise sector. And we started to see this hybrid motion coming out of community. When you look at your customer calls and your customer data, they are talking to you because they believe you will help them. So when you start to talk to them in their own language, it is a way community messaging or community building can start to be planted within your GTM plays that are digital. Many people start to build communities by opening up a Slack channel and they have a community. Well, no fault of yours, Mike, because you have a massive community to manage. But my point is that don't go into that yet if you're not even looking at your customer data, right?
Totally agree.
The community, you've got to really listen to people and be dialed into what they need. So again, a bit of a ramble, but I hope that answered.
No, absolutely invaluable. And that last point absolutely hit home. I mean, listening, as a salesperson, of course, listening is the most important attribute of a salesperson, but also from anybody from the go to market space, like, understanding fully their needs prior to actually building. I mean, what if they wanted Discord, for instance, versus Slack? Or what if they wanted a tight knit community that was private and they would be willing to pay $100 a month for?
100%.
Just wait, obsess over your early adopters. I love that. Okay, anyways, we've got about 6 minutes on the dot here. Let's keep going here. Got a bunch of great ones, by the way. Andy Lindsay says, when giving more people across different teams, AI enhanced autonomy. How do you keep messaging, brand, and identity on track when anyone can mock up marketing materials or vibe code in automation or whatever?
You have to lock the marquee messaging. So the wonderful thing about GPT, it's only about a month old, but with GPT for teams, the fact that we can share projects is that the messaging, the product marketing messaging is like that can be changed. And you have to teach people how to prompt where they do not change the marquee messaging. So when you share those projects, now the team can go off and create their own, like this is a great example. So we just had a client that did a really awesome product launch, right? And the CTO is very specific in how he wants us to talk about the new features. The sales team have very wonderful, vibrant personalities. So I know the way they want to write it. They probably want to make a joke about it in terms of like the impact, probably use a meme. So what we do is we advocate for having a buyer insights sheet or document. And we've done this with over 3 clients and it seems to be working, where it's literally a Google Doc. That is how we talk about this, right? There's no room for kind of inference or changing this. What you can do now is go and prompt in your own AIs and say, adapt this for this persona, adapt this based on your memory of how I communicate, adapt it in my voice. I think people don't take advantage of memory enough. Like that's one of the biggest thing of generative AI is that many times I will write an email in my own voice and I was like, this sounds very, I don't know, lackluster. And I will type in and I'll say, what am I trying to say here, but I'm not saying, right? So even running that with your product marketing messaging, sometimes you can, if you don't agree, because sales doesn't always agree with how marketing verbalizes things, you can say, without changing the definitive meaning of this language, how can I say this in a more collaborative way or a more simple way, right? There's a lot of talk about the humanities and philosophy and why people who have those skills will excel in the age of AI. And it is really about, it is because of that, you have to use the right adjectives to make the messaging really resonate in a way that hits as meaningful, because we are allergic now to digital marketing. When you think about if an app takes more than 2 seconds to load, why am I even bothering? I like to use this example, right? 5 years ago, if you went into the supermarket, there were 4 or 5 ice cream fridges. It is an aisle now. There is an entire ice cream aisle. There is ice cream made only of vegetables. There is ice cream with no sugar. There is ice cream that is non-dairy. So we expect these experiences in our when we engage with a brand. And that marquee messaging has to be locked and probably revisited on a monthly basis so that teams can really run fast to cater to almost every whimsy of their target segments. Because when we hold them back by getting every and or and it and they right, it starts to become one, they start using dark AI because they'll just use their personal AI and do it anyway. And because it is the way it is. And then 2, it's like, I don't really want to work with marketing because they're always going to nitpick at what I'm doing. So you have to lock it, whether it's in a GPT project that is now shareable or in a Claude artifact, and train your teams how to prompt to ensure that they do not edit the marquee messaging. I probably should add that to the infographic. But once you have that little snippet for them, that allows them to run a lot faster. And then you can sleep better knowing that they're going to go to market with something that's accurate.
Amazing. So well said too. Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. We've got this. We're marketers. We've got this. Yeah, that's why there's always that head to head. But nowadays, with the artifacts and the rooms and the projects, whatever, people can work together more efficiently now. I think that's kind of the biggest answer to all of this. That's amazing. Okay, so we have like a million other questions, yet we've got 76 seconds here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these questions. I'm going to put them into a Slack channel. We'll get you in there, Shaynara, and we'll get these answered. I know people are wanting your deck. They're wanting your everything. They want to hear more from you. So again, I'll throw her LinkedIn into the chat here. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions here. There are a bunch more, also a bunch of kudos. So those will also
Thank
be in
you.
the Slack channel. They love you. So
Thank
come
you.
on back. Thanks so much for spending the time with us. We've got about 30 seconds here. Any final last 10 seconds of wisdom?
I would just say keep doing what you're great at, and slow progress is still progress. There's a lot coming at people as on a global and a national scale, and our job security is constantly sort of in front of our face on LinkedIn, whether it's layoffs or it's people raising millions every week. And just remember, keep pushing forward in the way you know best. Lean into the communities you have, ask questions. My DMs are always open on LinkedIn. And always remember that in learning anything, falling is necessary. And saying to your leadership team really early on, hey, we're going to kill this. Give us about 3 months, just letting you know. But when we do fall, if you knock me harder, I'm going to come after you. So, I only say that half seriously, but yeah.
Fierce. Love it. Shannara, thank you so much. We've got, 2 seconds here. And to the next one. Thanks so much for being here. Bye.